Welcome to another lore video. And the big news is that on November the 23rd last week, Taranis was cleared of all of its controlled systems. The plan to isolate Taranis, Operation Deleted, has succeeded. The number 23 has often been given mystical or occult status. Historically, it's been attached to everything from magic rituals to secret societies. And I don't really buy into all that stuff, but it's interesting to note that November the 23rd, 1963 was when the first episode of Doctor Who was broadcast on television, and the Doctor fights aliens all the time, so we're in good company there. And this is also my 23rd video on the war, which is something I could never have planned since I had no idea of where we'd be before we got there, and so it's all just a bit of happy coincidence and fun to think about. Whether you believe in fate or destiny or karma or anything like that, and I can't really say I do, it's still nice when something happens that has a karmic feel to it. And so, kicking out all of the systems around Taranis on the 23rd, yeah, it was pretty special, and it's a milestone. As we come close to the first anniversary of the war, which has now passed. November the 29th last year was when the Stargoids arrived, after months of travelling between star systems to evade any resistance before they got here. We'll come back to the Titans and the Spire sites a bit later on, after a quick lore catch-up, but yeah, it's a great achievement. One Titan cleared of all its systems, and Legong looking to suffer the same fate within a week or two, and hopefully it won't take so long to get round to clearing the systems around the others, although there's a few that are going to still be very problematic, simply because of the routes that we'll have to take to undermine the controls before taking them out. But yeah, it's definite progress. It's a big moment for the community to completely clear out a Titan, and we'll talk a little bit about that and its effects on the war after this little quick lore catch-up. So what else has been happening? We've been a bit story-light for the last couple of weeks, but a few things have happened. Zemina Torval has now concluded her plan to set up an independent company and then hand over the reins to her daughter, and a community goal ran for a week to help her out with that, and the reward is her power play mining laser. Class 1 mining laser with extra range, which you'd otherwise only get after 4 weeks of being pledged to her. Never found much use for them really myself. They're a very niche item which a lot of players have questioned the need for, but there it is. I was a bit surprised when this came along. This plan of Torval's was talked about many months ago, before she got wrapped up in the whole assassination of her rival at Cain Massey, which as far as we know she actually had nothing to do with. And I wasn't really expecting an official community goal to finish her story like this, but, well, fair enough. Some corporate deals take more time than others, I guess, and it gives players non-war stuff to be involved in, lest we forget that outside the war zone, life mostly goes on. The Titan refugees that we've been rescuing are in quarantine and mostly seem okay. Some of them are even looking forward to being able to talk to and get visits from their families. But there are worries about them as well from various quarters. Everything from their potential to spread undetectable diseases to being programmed as some kind of Thargoid sleeper agent, seemingly normal now but able to be activated in the future. Some want them locked up forever, never to be trusted again. This article describes a less than objective Empire scientist describing what's happened to them as mutations, even though this is biologically incorrect. And agendas are to an extent overruling facts, as hysteria and paranoia are allowed to rule instead. Azimuth are champing at the bit to study them with their unparalleled humanitarianism, if by unparalleled humanitarianism you mean human experimentation. Felicia Winters wants to repatriate them, which has once again kicked off all the paranoia from her opponents, who don't know what to do about them either, but make more noise about it. Is there still a twist to come with these refugees? Well, it could be. We're told that millions have been abducted and we've rescued a lot of them, but not millions. So the potential is still there for these abductees, rescued or the ones still trapped, to play a big part in the story at some point. Speaking of Felicia Winters, It looks like her first job will be to counter the last-minute legislation that the T-1000 is pushing through. Most of it heavy-handed, overbearing and destructive, before she can get a decent day's work done. And she'll also have to deal with the Fednecks who think anything but full-on persecution of anyone they vaguely suspect of anything is a sign of weakness. Good luck to her. She's going to need it. So now what? With Taranis Isolated, can it do anything at all? This began with Operation Redacted, which isolated a system next to Legong from the controls around it to see if Legong itself could cause it to go into alert. From that, we learned that it couldn't. From that, we deduced that Titans cannot cause alerts by themselves. They need control systems to do it for them. And that's where this plan came from. It was the next logical step to remove all systems from around a Titan to see what, if anything, happens. I've waited for a week to see if Taranis can do anything else, whether it can somehow create new alerts, or whether it has other powers we haven't seen yet. Starved of its control systems to do its dirty work, this could still force the Titan to reveal previously hidden abilities, but so far it hasn't. With Taranis Isolated, the next step is to do the same to Legong, which is also down to its last few systems, and players are on a roll to make this happen now, inspired by Taranis becoming isolated. The momentum is finally on our side as we've spent months holding them back, then slowly and surely reversing the Thargoid expansion, reclaiming the territory they took, and preventing them from taking any more. As each week passes, we get closer and closer to seeing if this is all there is, or if the Thargoids have any more cards to play, and this is just stage one. It's easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day activities of clearing systems, reclaiming territory, and turning everything into a numbers game. And with it comes a trap of going round in circles, obsessed with one part of it and not seeing the bigger picture. This is why I've been getting frustrated with people who seemingly can't see beyond this stage, treating it as if it's all there is, and making more work for everyone by trying to arrange invasions for themselves. Yes, invasions are cool, and we all love them. Attacked ground ports are probably the coolest feature to be added for a long time, and have the advantage that Thargoid interceptors can't deploy their swarm attacks there, so that's one way to ease people into learning about how to fight them before going on to take them out wherever they appear. The introduction of glaze and size has added new dangers to that, and forced pilots to develop new methods of evasion or otherwise dealing with them, and that's been fun to learn about and adapt to. It's allowed a lot of casual players to do a bit of fighting without being blown away in seconds. Our squad was specifically set up to provide humanitarian support in an invasion 4.5 years ago, 3.5 years before the Titans arrived, so nobody's going to miss invasions more than us. But we also know that all things end, and to be honest, now these assets have been added to the game, like attacked ground ports and new activities on foot. If they can't reuse those assets in a future situation, perhaps terrorists instead of aliens like they've already done with burning stations, or faction wars or something, maybe even the superpowers warring with each other again, whatever, then that shows a terrible lack of imagination and, frankly, a waste of good assets in a game that has become renowned for its ingenuity in reusing them. So while I understand that everything has its time and everything ends, I also recognise that anything could come back in a new form for a new reason, and nothing ever needs to be considered done and dusted. That said, they obviously want this stage to go on for a bit longer at least, because the main activity we've been using to clear systems, tissue sampling, took a massive hit last week. Unpopulated alerts, which turn into new controlled systems if they don't get cleared in the week that they appear, have had a massive 150% increase in the samples needed to clear them, making them 2.5 times harder than they were before. Populated alerts have seen an increase of 58%, and they'll turn into invasions if they're not cleared in the week that they appear. With controls, you can spend a bit more time to clear them, but you will lose 33% of your work every week if you take longer than a week. But you can have work carrying over, and you can take a bit more time to clear controls. But alert systems are sudden death. You do them in that week, or they become an invasion, or they become a control. They're a lot more urgent when it comes to dealing with them. So this increase has been huge for those of us who have been clearing alerts. Unpopulated controls have seen an increase of 30% in the samples needed to clear them, and populated controls are unaffected, but, well, they already take loads to clear them anyway. This does feel like a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to Taranis getting cleared. I don't think they expected us to clear any of the inner controls yet, considering that the work to clear them massively increases as you get closer to the Titan. And so when it happened to Taranis, I think they panicked and added this increase in an effort to create new controls, which is why the unpopulated alerts took the biggest hit, because they will become new controls if they're not stopped. Some of us even wondered if Taranis losing all its systems meant that all the other Titans somehow managed to reinforce theirs, and that's why they all got harder. Even wondered if Taranis itself was somehow lending its energy to the effort in some unseen way, and that's why the other systems have become harder to clear at the other Titans. But no, this doesn't add up. Firstly, if that was true, it would have happened automatically on Thursday when Taranis went down and had no systems under its control. It wouldn't be a massive penalty to sampling only put in the day afterwards. Whether or not that's the philosophy behind it, that a Titan, once depleted of its own control systems, can lend energy to the others, it's not been an automatic process. It's been God-handed and with no explanation, so we're all playing guessing games again. Only sampling has been changed. Rescues, deliveries, combat, AX reactivations and salvage, they all work as they always have. And what makes that irritating is it shows they could have changed the value of each activity at any time, instead of what they have been doing, which is putting the overall work targets up or down, very crudely. And so they could have made combat in control systems worth more from the start if they wanted to. Combat and clearing conflict zones and killing interceptors should be worth a lot more in control systems than it actually is. And even if you sort of look at that in the kindest possible way and think of it as a backhanded compliment to the skill of anti-Xeno players, there's a point where that backhanded compliment becomes simply a chore, and nobody wants to spend hours fighting in a conflict zone only to see a couple of % in progress, especially back when we still had 1,000 systems to clear. So this should have been fixed long ago, really. Had combat been worth more from the start, we wouldn't have relied so heavily on sampling in the first place as the only activity that could possibly clear these systems in any reasonable amount of time. We only resorted to sampling because combat was so ineffective. Still, despite balance issues and hastily implemented buffs and nerfs to this sort of activity or that activity, overall we've done well. 2 of the Titans almost down and out, at least for the moment, and the clearing of the other Titans beginning to snowball a bit, so hopefully it won't take another year for the rest. Fewer populated alerts, so we are steering them away from human-occupied space into the previously uninhabited systems and then pushing them back from there. We're winning. Slowly, but we're winning. From initially being hit with lots of attacks and territory grabs and barely being able to deal with the job in front of us, we've grown in knowledge and experience, become more coordinated, learned more about how, where and when the enemy attacks, which we needed to find out before we could design any long-term strategies. And that took time because some things can't be deduced before they've been observed. And a lot of damage was done to human systems until we had that information that we needed to detect and counter their attack patterns. But now we have. And for the moment, at least, we're on an even keel with the enemy, understanding what they do and how they do it, and slowly countering it with operations of our own. In this sense, balance issues and other gripes aside, they've done well to create a war that has evolved, as have those fighting it, in a relatively organic way. Squads are crossing over, and everybody's doing a bit of everything. So when we started, we as a rescue squad got together with Operation Ida, a delivery squad, and Marauder Vanguard, an AX squad, because our philosophy was that in the absence of really knowing what to do, if we had a coordinated series of groups working together who between them could perform all of the activities in a system, then that would surely be something useful to do and put together and start to clear systems with while we were learning how the whole thing worked. But actually what's happened is that everybody's crossed over. You know, we've got rescue people doing a bit of AX, we've got delivery people doing sampling, we've got everybody doing a bit of everything, AXI doing rescues. As the war has gone on, nobody's been stuck in a role really. Everybody's adapted, everybody's tried new things, everybody's done new things. New activities that have come along which don't really fall into the purview of anybody, like the AX reactivations. I suppose you can think of them as AX, but you could also think of them as stealth missions. From that point of view, you could think of them as a humanitarian thing. There's lots of ways to argue some of the new activities, but the point is that we are not so rigid about what we do now. We've become a lot more adaptable. Groups are cooperating a lot better. People who have not considered trying to work a different way are now actually talking about and discussing different ways of working, and that's brilliant. I love that part of it. So despite all of the gripes and balance issues and various other things that I could take umbrage at, overall I think it is achieving what it was supposed to achieve in terms of an organic developing war where the people fighting it have to evolve just as much as the war itself. The Spire sites, now that they can be cleared, have become the new moneymaker because you can go there and kill Orthruses all day long. Be careful though. Take care not to target the Orthruses coming out of the Spires, otherwise they hit you with their anti-Guardian technology and neutralise any Guardian weapons you're carrying. It might be a turkey shoot, but you still need to discriminate a little bit. The Spire sites themselves are strange in how they work, because fighting or doing other stuff there may or may not clear the system itself. If the Spire site is not one of the 10 outermost systems from the Titan, then the site itself doesn't show any progress, but it clears the outermost 10 systems instead, up to a cap of 85%. The Spire site itself can only be cleared if it's one of the outer 10. The same thing happened with Titan rescues, that they helped to clear the outermost 10 systems from the Titan itself. But this may have changed. Originally they cleared Counter-Strike systems, then the 10 outermost, regardless of their status. And now some people are reporting that Titan rescues have reverted again to only clearing selected systems. Whatever the case, and reports are confusing about this, and I've not been able to nail it down with any kind of certainty what exactly the situation is. But whatever has changed with Titan rescues, it's overall seen as much of a muchness because Spire sites are doing the job faster anyway. A new activity has been created for Spire sites to sabotage the refinery. Now you may have seen my previous video on how to get the Spire site refinery compound, and if you haven't, there's loads of videos all over YouTube showing this, but it's now possible, thanks to research by Professor Palin, to contaminate these samples and put them back into the refinery, which sabotages the process and causes havoc for the enemy. More and more now, these Spire sites are being touted as refineries, which are feeding minerals and possibly other resources as well back to the Titans to reinforce them. And this is a link that's getting heavily plugged in Galnet and in the narrative, that the Spire sites are nourishing the Titans somehow, gathering minerals and materials to nourish and prolong the Titans with. And, you know, so this connection between the Titans and the Spire sites, I think we're going to hear a lot more about this as time goes on, because they've heavily hinted at the one fueling the other. So to get these sabotage missions, you go to the rescue ships, but not the same ones we delivered passengers to. You go to the other rescue ships, and before doing that, you go to any Spire site and you collect the materials there. The semi-refined Spire mineral, the impure Spire mineral, and coral sap. And there are also missions to gather these as well, so you may as well grab those while you're at it. And once you have the materials, you can then take missions to contaminate the Spire sites. So a contaminated sample is created and you go and put it in the machine at the Spire site to sabotage it. Or, because you've already got contaminated samples from doing the collection missions, you can simply go to a Spire site without taking a mission to do it and go and contaminate it. Your choice. I've linked to a short video by Lilac Light from Canon showing what happens when you put a contaminated compound back into the refinery machine, and that link is below. So, as well as fighting Orthruses, Banshees and Scouts and lower level interceptors at a Spire site, you can now sabotage them as well, but it comes with a catch. If you're sabotaging a Spire site while others are fighting there in the same instance, it causes more and more interceptors to show up, which can be an extra headache for those fighting in the skies. So AXI and other groups are calling for a little bit of cooperation there between the sabotagers and the fighters to avoid making trouble for each other, especially if they've got some newbies there who just want to have a bit of fun and make some money with Orthrus kills. Otherwise, fighting or sabotaging in Spire sites is a lot of fun, and so is Spire site combat in general. Some groups even have a split operation, with one force fighting ships in the sky while the other takes out the Banshees on the ground, and of course there's an absolute ton of money to be made at the same time. We don't know what's coming next, possibly not a lot till update 18, but that is the next step now, to find out. If each Titan has its own mission, then it must surely be a matter of time before we discover what that is, or even if it's true. And we can never rule out some curveball being thrown at us that we could never see coming, but for the moment, we know what's going on, we know how the enemy works, and although it's not Elliot Ness versus Al Capone yet, and none of us would consider ourselves untouchable, neither are we victims anymore. At the start of the war, we were reacting desperately to attack waves that we didn't know how to deal with, while 50 systems a week were being taken by the enemy. Now, we're proactively and systematically taking back the territory they took from us, while denying them any new systems to occupy, while we all wait to see what happens next. Stay safe, and as always, thanks for watching.